The Awakening. The silver hull of the IES Prometheus gleamed under the crimson light of Proxima Centauri as Captain Ilara Voss stared through the main viewport. Proxima hung before them, a rocky world that had called to humanity for decades. Now, they were here, and they had found something. "Captain, you need to see this," Lieutenant Commander Hayes called from the science station, his voice tight with barely contained excitement. Ilara crossed the bridge with measured steps, her dark eyes focused on the holographic display. The scan results showed a perfect geometric structure buried beneath the planet's northern hemisphere, a dome of unknown material that had resisted all attempts at analysis. "Natural formations don't make hexagonal patterns with precise 60-degree angles," Hayes said unnecessarily. "No," Ilara agreed. "They don't. Prepare a landing party. I want to see this with my own eyes." 12 hours later, Ilara stood inside an alien structure that predated human civilization by millions of years. The air inside the dome was breathable, maintained by mechanisms they couldn't begin to understand. Dr. Caden Reed, the expedition's archaeologist, moved reverently among crystalline pillars that seemed to hum with inner light. "This architecture," he whispered, "it's impossible. The materials, the preservation, nothing we know could last this long." Commander Diana Chen, Ilara's second-in-command, kept her hand near her sidearm. "Maybe we should consider the possibility that it's not as old as we think." "No," Reed shook his head, gesturing to intricate symbols etched into the floor. "These markings match fragments found on Mars and Europa. Same civilization, same era. At least 30 million years ago." At the center of the chamber stood what could only be described as an altar, a raised platform supporting a pulsing blue crystal the size of a human heart. Reed approached it slowly. "Captain," the writings along the base. "I believe they're instructions." "For what?" Ilara asked, a knot forming in her stomach. "Communication," Reed replied, his eyes gleaming with scholarly excitement. "I think this is a doorway, Captain. A way to speak with whoever built this place." "Dr. Reed, I don't recall authorizing you to activate unknown alien technology," Ilara said sharply, but it was too late. Reed had already placed his hand on the crystal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the humming intensified, and the crystal flared with blinding light. When Ilara could see again, Reed stood frozen, his eyes wide and unblinking, mouth open in a silent scream. "Reed." Chen moved toward him, but Ilara grabbed her arm. "Don't touch him." The archaeologist's body remained motionless, but his shadow began to move independently, stretching and writhing across the floor. It rose up the wall, a darkness deeper than the absence of light, taking shape into something that had never evolved in any earthly ecosystem. "We need to leave," Ilara whispered. "Now." As they backed toward the entrance, Reed's body collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. His shadow, no longer bound to his form, spread across the ceiling in tendrils of absolute darkness. "Captain," Hayes's voice crackled over the comm, "we're detecting massive energy fluctuations from your location. What's happening down there?" "Emergency evacuation. Prepare for immediate departure," Ilara ordered, helping Chen drag Reed's body toward the exit. The scientist's eyes snapped open, entirely black, without iris or pupil. "The door is open," he said, but it wasn't Reed's voice. The words seemed to bypass air altogether, forming directly in Ilara's mind. "We have waited so long." Then Reed began to scream, clutching his head as though trying to hold something inside. "They're in my mind. There." His words dissolved into incoherent wailing. The team barely made it back to the Prometheus. By the time they reached orbit, 3 security officers had collapsed, complaining of whispers in their minds and shadows that moved at the edge of vision. In the medical bay, Dr. Amara Okafor scanned Reed's brain with growing confusion. "His neural activity is impossible," she reported. "It's as though his consciousness is being overwritten by something else." "Can you stop it?" Ilara asked. I don't even understand what's happening, Okafor admitted. This isn't a virus or a parasite. It's like his mind is being consumed. These entities, these void weavers, exist in a dimension that intersects with our own, she explained. They perceive consciousness as energy, particularly human consciousness with its capacity for abstract thought and self-reflection. They feed on it, consuming the essence while leaving the physical body intact. How do we fight something that isn't physical? Demanded General Ramirez of the Earth Defense Force. With consciousness itself, Maya replied, activating a holographic display. Captain Voss discovered that focused will could temporarily repel them. Building on that, we've developed this. The display showed a small device resembling a neural implant. The consciousness anchor. It creates a feedback loop within the human mind, reinforcing our natural mental barriers. It won't stop the void weavers completely, but it buys us time. Time for what? Asked the representative from Mars Colony. Maya's expression hardened. Time to develop weapons that can affect beings that exist beyond conventional physics. Time to understand what they truly are and why they've targeted humanity specifically. Over the next 3 months, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The Arcturus colony fell silent after reporting shadow figures moving through habitat domes. The mining station on Titan broadcast a final message showing crew members walking willingly into writhing darkness, their faces ecstatic. On Earth, people reported dreams of infinite darkness calling to them. Children drew the same strange geometric patterns that had been found in the Prometheus. The Human Space Council, formed hastily from Earth's governments and colonial authorities, declared a state of existential emergency. Admiral Chen, now commanding the defense fleet, coordinated the distribution of consciousness anchors to key personnel. Dr. Sinclair continued her research, barely sleeping as she sought to understand humanity's new enemy. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Hiroshi Tanaka, formerly a poet before joining Earth Defense, noticed that the Void Weavers retreated from his quarters where he had filled data screens with his compositions. It's not just willpower, Maya realized after analyzing his observation. It's creativity, abstract thought, imagination. The very things that make human consciousness attractive to them are also what they cannot comprehend or control. The first coordinated defense took place at Nova Brasilia, the largest settlement on Mars. When the Void Weavers came, shadow forms sliding between dimensions, reaching into human minds, they met unexpected resistance. 5,000 colonists, equipped with consciousness anchors and linked by quantum entanglement networks, focused their thoughts not on fear but on creation. They imagined impossible colors, conceptualized mathematical structures that could not exist in physical space, envisioned worlds with different physical laws. For the first time, the Void Weavers retreated. Several entity clusters dissipated entirely, their coherence disrupted by exposure to human imagination in its purest form. They feed on consciousness, Maya reported to the Council afterward, but not all aspects of it. Creativity acts like poison to them, or perhaps more accurately, like code they cannot process. So we fight them with poetry and mathematics. General Ramirez asked skeptically. In a manner of speaking, yes, Maya replied. But we need to weaponize it, focus it. And for that, we need the Mindlink. The Mindlink became humanity's most ambitious and controversial project, a quantum network designed to connect human minds directly, amplifying their collective creative output into a weapon capable of disrupting the dimensional barriers the Void Weavers used to enter our reality. Opposition was fierce. Many feared sacrificing individual mental privacy in the face of an enemy that already invaded minds. Others worried that connecting human consciousness might actually make it easier for the Void Weavers to consume humanity all at once. We're running out of options, Admiral Chen argued before the Council. The defense at Nova Brasilia worked, but the Void Weavers are adapting. They've started targeting our communication networks, disrupting our ability to coordinate. The Mindlink is our best chance at survival. The decision came as reports arrived that the Arcturus colony had been completely overtaken. Surveillance drones showed thousands of human bodies moving in perfect unison, their eyes black voids, their shadows elongated and twisted into impossible shapes. "They're building something," Maya observed, studying the footage. "A physical anchor in our dimension. If they complete it." She didn't need to finish. Everyone understood the implications. If the Void Weavers established a permanent foothold in physical reality, no corner of human space would be safe. By the third day in orbit, half the crew reported hallucinations. Security footage showed shadows moving without sources, gathering in corners and air ducts. Ilara ordered an emergency departure, but the engines failed to respond. In engineering, Chief Torres found the matter-antimatter regulators completely disassembled, not damaged, but methodically taken apart and arranged in patterns that made no logical sense. The technicians responsible had no memory of doing it. "It's like they're learning," Chen observed as they manually reset the systems. "Studying how we work, how our technology functions." "Not just our technology," Ilara said grimly. "Our minds." Reed had been restrained after attacking a nurse, but the restraints now lay empty. The medical logs showed him simply fading from the camera's view, becoming transparent until nothing remained. That night, as Ilara recorded her log, she felt a cold presence behind her. She didn't turn around. "What do you want?" she asked the empty room. The temperature dropped further, and shadows writhed on the wall before her. "We hunger," came the thought. Not in words, but in concepts that unfolded painfully in her mind. "Your species is unique. Your consciousness exists both within and beyond physical constraints. Delicious complexity. You're killing my crew." "Consuming, not killing. Death means nothing to us. We exist where consciousness flows between states. Your people call it death, but it is merely transition." The ship's lights flickered, and Ilara felt pressure building in her skull. "Why contact us now? Humanity has been exploring space for centuries. You were not ready before. Now your minds reach outward, brushing against the places we dwell." The archaeologist opened the way. "Now we hunger for all of you." The next morning, Ilara found 12 crew members missing, their quarters empty but for strange geometric patterns etched into walls and floors. The entities, whatever they were, had become bolder. Using emergency protocols, Ilara and Chen manually engaged the backup drives. The Prometheus lurched away from Proxima, fighting what felt like currents of resistance. "We need to warn Earth," Ilara said, initiating the quantum communication array. "These things won't stay here." "What do we even call them?" Chen asked, watching shadows gather around the bridge stations. Ilara thought about the emptiness in Reed's eyes, the way her people simply ceased to exist while their bodies remained. "The Void Weavers," she said. "They exist in the space between consciousness and whatever lies beyond." As the Prometheus accelerated toward the jump point, Ilara recorded humanity's first warning about the entities that dwelled beyond death itself. She had no way of knowing if the message would reach Earth, or if what remained of her crew would survive to deliver it personally. The Void Weavers had awakened, and humanity's understanding of life, death, and consciousness would never be the same. In her quarters, preparing what might be her final report, Ilara realized something that gave her the first glimmer of hope. When she had stood firm against the presence in her room, resisting the fear that threatened to overwhelm her, the shadow had retreated slightly. The Void Weavers fed on fear and confusion, growing stronger when minds surrendered to terror. "They can be fought," she whispered to herself, focusing her thoughts into a shield of determination. Not with weapons, but with the strength of human will. As the Prometheus hurtled toward Earth, Ilara prepared to bring both a warning and the first clue to humanity's resistance against an enemy that existed beyond death itself. The resistance. Admiral Marcus Chen stood at the center of the Human Space Council chamber, his sister Diana's final message playing before the assembled delegates. The holographic image flickered. Diana's face gaunt, her eyes haunted as she delivered her report. "The Prometheus will not make it back to Earth," she said, her voice eerily calm. "Captain Voss and I are the only ones left. The others—" She paused, swallowing hard. "The Void Weavers have taken them. Not killed, consumed. Their bodies remain, but what made them people is gone." The message continued, detailing the expedition's findings and the nature of the threat now approaching Earth. When it ended, the chamber remained silent for a long moment. "The Prometheus self-destructed 3 days ago, near Saturn's orbit," Admiral Chen finally said. "But the entities it carried have already reached our outer colonies. New Eden reported its first cases yesterday." Dr. Maya Sinclair stepped forward, her dark complexion ashen with exhaustion. As Earth's foremost expert on consciousness theory, she had been working nonstop since the first reports arrived. Construction of the Mindlink began immediately. On Earth's moon, a massive installation took shape, a network hub that would connect with relay stations throughout human territory. Volunteers were sought for the first direct neural connections, risking their individual identities to form the network's foundation. Admiral Chen was among the first to volunteer. "Diana would have done the same," he said simply. As the Void Weavers pressed their assault across the solar system, humanity raced to complete its last, best hope. The entities seemed to sense the threat, concentrating their efforts on the lunar installation. Shadow ships, vessels crewed by consciousness-empty humans, attempted to breach the defenses. Maya worked tirelessly to refine the Mindlink protocols, ensuring that connected individuals would retain their core identities while contributing to the collective consciousness weapon. The night before activation, she found Admiral Chen staring at the Earth through the installation's viewport. "What if we become something just as alien as they are?" he asked quietly. "We won't," Maya assured him. "The Void Weavers consume individuality. Our strength comes from preserving it while acting in unity." The next morning, as the Shadow Fleet approached lunar orbit, Maya initiated the Mindlink with 300 volunteers connected to the network. Admiral Chen, seated in the central connection node, closed his eyes as the neural interfaces activated. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, a wave of pure thought energy erupted from the installation, rippling across space in patterns that defied conventional physics. Where it touched the Shadow Fleet, vessels began to dissolve, the stolen human bodies inside collapsing as the controlling entities were forced back into their own dimension. The Mindlink participants reported an extraordinary experience. Each remained distinctly themselves while simultaneously experiencing the thoughts and creativity of every other mind in the network. Together, they generated concepts and imaginings that no single human could have conceived, creating a symphony of consciousness that was anathema to the Void Weavers. At the Arcturus colony, the massive structure that possessed humans had been building shuddered and began to collapse as the wave reached it. The blackness that had filled their eyes receded, leaving confusion and horror, but also, miraculously, life. "It's working," Maya whispered, watching the readings. "They're retreating." Admiral Chen, emerging from the Mindlink, looked decades older but smiled with profound relief. "For now, but they'll be back. They exist beyond death. This isn't over." "No," Maya agreed. "But we've proven something today that changes everything. The very qualities that made us targets, our creativity, our imagination, our capacity for abstract thought, are our greatest weapons. The Void Weavers thought us easy prey because our consciousness is complex enough to sustain them. They never considered that same complexity might be their undoing. In the aftermath, recovery teams found survivors at colonies thought completely lost. Though traumatized, many reported being protected by their own creative pursuits, musicians whose compositions disrupted the entity's attempts to feed, engineers whose technical innovations confused the invaders, children whose unfiltered imagination proved naturally resistant. The Human Space Council established permanent Mindlink installations throughout human territory, creating a network of consciousness that could be activated whenever the Void Weavers returned. And return they would. Sensors at the edge of the solar system detected dimensional disturbances that suggested the entities were regrouping, perhaps reconsidering their approach to what had proven to be far from defenseless prey. Admiral Chen, addressing the Council after the victory, put it simply: death meant nothing to them, and they assumed it meant everything to us. That was their mistake. Humanity has always contemplated what lies beyond death, has always created art and science and philosophy to explore the unknowable. We've been preparing to face entities like the Void Weavers since the first human looked up at the stars and wondered what might be looking back. As humanity rebuilt, the Mindlink evolved from weapon to tool, connecting human consciousness not just for defense, but for unprecedented collaborative creation. New technologies, art forms, and philosophical understandings emerged from the network, accelerating human development in ways no one could have predicted. The Void Weavers had sought to consume humanity's consciousness. Instead, they had forced it to evolve, to grow stronger through unity while preserving the individual creativity that had proven to be their salvation. And somewhere in the space between dimensions, in the realm beyond death where consciousness and reality blurred, the Void Weavers observed this unexpected development with what might almost be described as fear. Humanity had proven itself not just prey, but predator. The war beyond death had only just begun, and for the first time in their ancient existence, the Void Weavers wondered if they might lose.